What should you expect from Zombie Stage? Zombie Stage has just started. However, it has given us plenty to talk about, discuss, predict, and overall just yap about until we get the second round. And given the rate in which Alien Stage videos were released, we will probably be waiting a long time for round 2. Probably somewhere within the realm of 1 to 3 months, which makes sense given how long it takes to animate and make unique music and all that sort of stuff. But even without round 2, there is still plenty of stuff for us to yap about in the meantime. For example, one thing I failed to mention in my initial video covering round 1 was the fact that this is not just technically an alternative universe. This isn't just like a standard AU, it's an alternate universe that has all the contestants of Alien Stage happily in high school together, and Zombie Stage is just a cult classic movie in their world. And even more specifically than that, this movie appreciation club takes place in a high school called Anact High School, which is a fun, neat little nod to Alien Stage's Anact Gardens, which is a neat little callback. All of this is explained in a comic that is available for free on Vivinos' Patreon, and since it is available for free on their Patreon, I will be showing it in bits and pieces. If it was more exclusive content that you would have to pay for, I wouldn't, but since you can just check it out for free right now, which I suggest you do, I'll put some of the panels on screen when necessary and discussing some of the stuff that is brought up in said comic. Now, I'm going to be saying the word comic a lot, but from this comic itself, we get interactions between the characters that you would expect. Mizi and Sua being all chummy, Ivan trying to get close to Till, Hyuna hitting on Luka. It's all pretty standard stuff and pretty similar to the stuff we are familiar with in regards to these characters, types, and characterizations that we saw throughout Alien Stage. I've heard some people also say that this universe that we are shown in this little comic is the same as the version of the world we see, or the alternative universe we see shown off in Weige, which is possible. But since we also seem to see an adult Hyuna and Luka in Weige, whether or not these two universes are the same is possible, but it's uncertain, to be honest, in my opinion. Let me know whether or not you think these two are the same universes down below. But we're going to be talking about the comic for a little bit first. But another fun thing that is described in this comic is this neat little piece of info about the infected specifically. And that apparently the infected have some sort of gemstones growing inside their bodies, which is very interesting and also very reminiscent to the visuals we saw back in Karma of these, jewels being crushed and in each other's mouths and forced on people. Very symbolic imagery. However, with that being said, let's talk about the infected themselves, as there is some interesting stuff to talk about in regards to how they differ from other zombie media. Now, as this is a horror channel, I love zombies, I love all horror stuff, right? But for the subgenre of zombie stuff, zombie movies, games, comics, whatever, right? Zombies typically have a similar template to each other with slightly different details. For example, some zombies can talk, some only eat brains, some zombies can be cured, and some zombies are infected and come back to life as zombies after they die, whilst others it's more of a straight up infection. Right, in this version of a zombie outbreak in Zombie Stage, gathering from what we are told from the Patreon comic, which describes what's on the back of the box of the Blu-ray that, Mizi finds of Zombie Stage, as well as what we see in the first round, it's fair to say that this version of the zombie infection is relatively different to common appearances of zombies in media. Firstly, it seems that the infection itself doesn't straight up take over the dead. It's a virus, more like something you see in the 28 Days Later franchise, or 28 months, weeks, well, forget weeks, it's not as good, where it's more of an infection that spreads. Whilst in 28 Days, it's spread through blood, but in Zombie Stage, it's spread through more of a common way with zombie media, where it's spread through biting, like most traditional zombie media. However, the infection itself and the way it's portrayed visually to the audience is through these black lesions and markings on the infected, which is a pretty cool visual, as the infected also seem to have very limited autonomy that changes from person to person. Their psyche seems all but lost, except for some minor characteristics that stick around. Sua's love for Mizi remains, but any complex emotions that Mizi may have felt for Sua and performing as a whole are just gone. We see that quite clearly. Just look at Mizi from before she was infected and Mizi when she's on stage. They're not the same person anymore. But at the same time, this infection could also be infecting the dead, or the virus itself may cause decay, because why else would Sua's leg just be straight up bone and sinew? Yes, we have stuff like punishment time, or whatever that stuff was called before, with Sua losing her arm or whatever, and, body parts being removed and stuff, but Sua's leg looks like it's been rotted away, less so than carved to pieces, so maybe the infection also causes decay as well. Maybe that's what the black lesions are, literally the body's decaying. Another thing of note is the gem part, which I said before was, from the little blurb on the back of the Blu-ray that Mizi plays for this movie appreciation club. It also mentions how crime syndicates and corrupt cops are the reason for the infected being treated in such a negative way. However, it also mentions how the infected started growing a gemstone in their body. Does that mean the gemstone itself is the cause of the infection in people? Can it be removed? Can people be cured by removing the gemstone? Who knows? Have we even really seen the gemstones themselves yet? I'm not sure, but I imagine we'll probably find out much more in, the upcoming rounds. Now it's time for me to do something that I probably should have done for a dedicated video back when Alien Stage was releasing, and this part's going to be significantly less scripted, and that is predictions. What do I think is going to happen? Do I think this will be a reflection of Alien Stage almost wholeheartedly? Will there be a happy ending? To answer that last one, probably not, but as I mentioned in my prior video regarding round 1, I believe that it will take a while for us to get any new content in regards to Zombie Stage, especially if Alien Stage is anything to go by, but now to get into my actual predictions for the series. But I will say now it is really early on, considering how many videos are in Alien Stage. We had several rounds plus, all in, top 3, Karma, the Weige. There was plenty of videos outside of the rounds as well. Given the fact that we saw the pamphlet back in the teaser of who's performing in the circus, so to speak, who's performing on the Zombie Stage, and with the framing device, as shown in the comic, being like a singular movie, I can't see it being nowhere near as long as Alien Stage was, because Alien Stage was over the course of, I think, a couple years, in regards to, out in, the actual real world, so to speak. The first round came out in the teaser beforehand, and then between that and Karma's release was years. I don't think Zombie Stage will be as long, probably a year or 2. Probably close to 2, given how long it takes to make these videos. But that's neither here nor there. What will actually happen in regards to the series? Let me try and think. As I say, I'm going unscripted now, and I've got a couple notes, but I'm incredibly unsure. We have the characterizations of what we've seen in Alien Stage. The relationships between characters still seem to remain consistent. Sua and Mizi still in love to an extent. Mizi obviously having much more complicated feelings this time, given how she, was used by the media and her sexualization. That's another topic to discuss for later, but the characterizations overall feel the same, but due to their environments and the situations they're in, their personalities change as a result of that, which is understandable. Now you have to think, how will, Ivan, Till, Luka, how will they have changed as a result of their circumstances, right? Hyuna seems relatively the same. Obviously, her backstory is that she was in previous Alien Stage and she was in, Enact Guards and stuff, but given how Zombie Stage works, does that mean Hyuna was previously infected? I don't think so. Her character is probably significantly different to how it was in Alien Stage, because she couldn't have been a performer, because that would mean she would have to have been on the Zombie Stage and been infected and then somehow have been cured. That doesn't seem to have been possible. We don't know yet whether or not the infection can actually be cured. We don't know, because we don't know how the inner workings of the infection works. At least not yet. So Hyuna will probably be different, and as a result maybe she won't get, gunned down this time. Maybe she'll live, who knows. Luka in the final round, the second round, is Till and Ivan. As I said before, they're doomed. Same with Mizi and Sua, they're just, they're just doomed. That's how their characters work. More so Ivan than Till for obvious reasons. Hopefully, I hope one thing remains consistent. We saw that, the first rounds are very much reflections of each other in regards to Alien Stage and Zombie Stage, where, Mizi, Sua battle, for lack of a better word. Mizi comes out on top, Sua gets punished. Obviously, they're both very different worlds, and the punishment takes a very different form, but that is a consistent through line. The question arises whether or not the rest of the tournament will be the same, because Luka is again kind of like the big bad, the final boss, so to speak. He's the final round participant, whatever you want to say. Ivan and Till, obviously going head to head, just as they did prior. Obviously, when round 2 does come out, we'll get a big flashback between Ivan and Till. Ivan will still be in love with Till and will probably try and sacrifice themselves again. Whether or not Till is in the same kind of predicament as Mizi, where they're just completely infected and their mind's gone, is up in the air. Ivan seems more aware of himself because, you know, when we see him at the end of round 1, he's whistling, he's chained up. So he's probably more cognizant, you know, he's more sentient. He's not just kind of a doll, so to speak, as Mizi seems to be, just kind of a puppet for entertainment. Ivan seems a bit more aware of himself and lucid. Granted, that's just from like 2 seconds of him whistling, but, you know, it's going to be up in the air for a while anyway. The tournament as well is also a bit questionable, because it's 3 rounds, right? I think in the teaser we see that it's literally just, the final is just Luka, you know, he's the only one that's mentioned. It's not like, you know, one of the winners will go up against Ivan. It's just, not one of the winners will go up against Luka, it's just Luka. Does that mean Luka's gonna, you know, is it going to be like how it was before, where it's like Mizi wins the first round, then Till wins the second? Will there be a third round of Mizi versus Till? I don't know. It doesn't seem to be that way. It seems the losers just get punished and the winners get to survive for a bit longer, even though surviving is a bit of a strong word, considering they're just kind of walking corpses. I don't know. Is Luka just going to be like a singular performance? Because maybe he's barely infected? Who knows? There's a lot of cool imagery as well in this, with like the white rabbits and the love hearts. It's so much more cutesy, and like, for those who aren't aware, they're like cool goat Punisher guys who look kind of neat. Look a lot like the goat, like the evil goat butler people from Yumi Neko, if you're aware of those guys. They're kind of cool. To TLDR these predictions, I have not got much to say. I want Till to win because, you know, he's best boy. I don't really mess with a lot of people in this series in Alien Stage as much as I do Till. He's the most likable, in my opinion. Everyone else is either ridiculously unhealthily infatuated with people, is a psychopath, or is just like Hyuna, who's also pretty normal, you know. Ivan's obsessed with Till. Mizi is just kind of obsessed with Sua, at least in regards to Alien Stage. Sua is sacrificial of herself and just, you know, gives herself up, which is, you know, fair enough given the scenario. But like, Till and Hyuna just kind of seem to be the most chill, so I messed with those two the most. We also saw, like, in the teaser, one of Hyuna's like men from Alien Stage, I think it was, one of the dudes with the scars on his face. So there are like, she's probably got a whole group as well. It's not just her on her own, probably. There'll probably be some big blowout in the finale with Hyuna trying to free the infected or something, and maybe she gets infected. Maybe that's how Zombie Stage ends. Hyuna tries to free all the infected, and she gets infected herself. That's my prediction. Do I actually believe it's going to happen? I don't know, but it would be kind of interesting. Instead of her dying like she did in Alien Stage, she becomes infected and is forced to perform like she did initially early on in Alien Stage, which would be kind of, you know, circular, you know, so to speak. This was supposed to be like unscripted predictions, but I've got nothing because there's such like not enough to go on yet, for my opinion, for like a whole story prediction. But I'm very excited to see what happens, and I hope you are too. But yeah, that was just me yapping about Zombie Stage for a little while. Let me know what your predictions are down below. Let me know what horror stuff you want me to talk about as we wait for more rounds to be released of Zombie Stage, like horror games, manga, anime, who cares? And I'll talk about anything. And let me know how doomed you think the cast of this new series is, because if Vivinos' other work is anything to go by, most of these characters are doomed. But with that being said, do's my doodles. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.